Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for the final panel session of today, Wednesday. And at this time, please join me in welcoming to the stage Chief Warrant Officer Tim Reyna, U.S. Army retired, AFCEA International CIO and CTO.
Good afternoon, everyone. What a great session that we just witnessed. That was amazing. So great job. Hopefully everybody got the great message there. So this is, as it was mentioned, our last panel for the day. So I'm here and I had the honor of introducing one of our guests that helped sponsor this. But before I go there and I introduce our guests to introduce our panel, I want to highlight that this does have the continuing education credit. So we do have the CompTIA, the GIAC, and the CERT Nexus. So if you're interested in that, over here on the back side, we have a scanner, so please make sure to do that. And also, if you're not a member, we ask that you please go through our booth 2933. I'd like to start off by thanking Rubrik for their support for this afternoon's panel. They are represented today by Chris Martirano, Account Executive. Chris is a distinct executive account manager with 14 years in the computer software industry. At this time, I'd like to welcome Chris to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Cyber Readiness 2025 panel on innovating, integrating, and empowering the warfighter here at TechNet Cyber in Baltimore, Maryland, 2025. I'm Chris Martirano. I'm an account manager here at Rubrik. If you haven't heard of us, we are a data protection and cyber resiliency company. We focus on protecting customers' data, whether that be on-prem, in the cloud, or in a hybrid environment. And now I am pleased to introduce our esteemed panel and panelists on behalf of AFCEA International. Starting with our moderator, Brigadier General Terrence Adams, Deputy Principal Cyber Advisor to the Secretary of Defense and Senior Military Advisor for Cyber Policy with the United States Air Force.
I know. I didn't know we had PCA fans. I'm sorry.
Our first panelist, Dr. Wanda Jones-Heath, Principal Cyber Advisor with the United States Air Force. CW5, Matthias Single, Senior Technical Advisor, Office of the Principal Cyber Advisor, Department of the Army. Last and certainly not least, we have Ms. Anne Marie Schumann, Navy Principal Cyber Advisor with the Department of Navy.
Woo! I guess it's over to me to begin. I didn't have any theme music, so I'm a little jealous there. I think Tim had some, so I'm jealous. We are here, exciting panel off of exciting keynote that we have. Thanks for you all who have gathered to hear the PCA conversation. So we'll have an opportunity to kick off and talk about cyber integration. We're going to hit on operational technology, also critical infrastructure, and then we're going to get what I believe is the most important part, is talking about our people. Before I do that, I want to thank AFCEA. Thanks for the leadership of AFCEA that's gathered here today, the partnership that AFCEA provides across the DoD umbrella and across the nation is just very powerful, bringing us together each year to have these kind of conversations. Additionally, I'd like to thank my team here. I saw Tim Curry somewhere, Rob and Jesse somewhere. Thanks for all the folks from my office that are here as well to help prepare me to get here. And you also heard my boss earlier, Ashley Manning, who was here. So the PCA's office is here in force, and we'll begin. One thing to remember, so my leadership tenets are listen, lift, love. And so we're going to have an opportunity to listen to you all through questions. So we're going to save a significant amount of time to go through questions and answers. So please go ahead and start formulating your questions. Save the hard ones for Chief. Chief told me earlier, give me all of the hard questions. So we're going to save the hard ones for you. But we'll go ahead and begin, and we'll have the panel members to introduce themselves, give some background or priorities, and we'll start with the Navy with Anne Marie.
Yeah, thanks, TA. So one thing, somebody asked Katie Arrington about her lessons learned, and I have a brand new one today, which is never ever agree to do a panel right after Katie Arrington, because I don't know how we follow that up, but hopefully we can keep your attention here. So Katie really gave some great food for thought, and in my opening comments, I'd like to respond to a couple things she said from the Department of Navy PCA point of view. One thing she said was that change is hard, and I absolutely agree with that. It is a challenging time with a lot of change right now, but the thing I want to focus on is that there are opportunities in that change. The other thing that Katie said is don't be in a role more than 5 years. Your first year, you're kind of learning your job. I've just completed my first year. Right? Your second year, what do you want to change? So, linking up the opportunities that are available right now with what I want to change, I'm driving at a couple things. The first thing that I am concerned with is readiness, and I think that's a common theme you'll hear today across all of the PCAs. The readiness of our forces, the readiness of our critical infrastructure, of our warfighting platforms, our ships, our submarines, our weapon systems are all critical to the next fight, which is already upon us. Additionally, removing the roadblocks to that readiness, the roadblocks that exist to survivability and lethality. There's a great partnership across the PCAs and also with the CIOs of the DoD and with the Defense Industrial Base. And so I think the time is now for saying we know what we need to do, how do we do it differently to enable that survivability and lethality that's needed faster. And finally, driving a focus on accountability for the results that matter to the warfighter, right? So there's a whole lot of things we're asked to do, but in this increasingly resource-constrained environment, we have to be laser focused on what the operational requirements are and what actually drives warfighting outcomes. So that's what I'm looking forward to in my second year as PCA. Over to you, Wanda.
All right, thank you so much. First of all, sitting on the stage with my colleagues. In previous sessions that you heard today on this stage, you'll hear a theme. It's about readiness, and Anne Marie mentioned it. Some of the things that I would like to focus on as I go into my fourth year in this position. The first year was, I was dual-hatted, still just new in the position, so really 3 going into my fourth year. Some of the priorities I look at is how do we transform in the midst of this complex environment that we now find ourselves in. Everything is changing. We have cuts, we have asks, we have requirements, and it's all about the warfighter. How do we still do our job while we also meet the demands of this administration? You've heard a lot about, workforce, huge emphasis on workforce and how do we retain, retrain if needed, and recruit as we change and transform. And then lastly, investments. How do we have an investment strategy that is equitable across our entire network, our operational technology, our weapon systems, our business systems, all require us to make decisions on investing or not, and how do we bring that investment strategy across everything that we need, no matter the nipper, sipper, JWICs, or SAP.
Thank you, Chief.
Sir, thank you for inviting me to be here today at my first TechNet Cyber. So if you are going to ask some questions, take it easy on me, please. No, but in all seriousness, I want to share a little bit about my background. I started out in the Army as a 25 uniform signal support system specialist. And, in the late 90s when I came in the service, we were more focused on network availability than anything else. And, you saw that continue even as I became a warrant officer until about 2008 when we started to really focus on network security side of the house. So by 2013, the Army's all in with the Cyber Protection Brigade and their cyber protection teams, and that's where I kind of got my start into defensive cyber operations. Having some time on service teams and national teams along with brigade and battalion staff, most of my military career has been spent at that brigade level and below. So for the last 2 years, as I've been in the PCA office, one of my focuses has been to help, advocate for the warfighter as senior leaders develop policy and doctrine. I wanted to be that voice of reason and, tell them how this is going to affect those at the lowest levels. So that's kind of been what I've been focusing on here in the office as I, finish up this summer.
Thank you. So thanks for that. So again, quick roll through our format. We'll go through questions. I'll ask each one of them a question directly, and to get more variety, I won't ask each one of them to go through and answer the same question, but if you feel like you want to jump in on that question, feel free to do so. And then we'll finish that up, open it up for the audience, and then we'll do some closing remarks. I'll start a question with Ms. Jones-Heath. As we talk about acceleration, what do you think the measures that the Air Force can do to be able to accelerate the integration of cyber while maintaining some of the fundamental things that we want to do by ensuring that we have that insurance piece and also not compromising speed?
I will start by talking about how we think about cyber. Is it a core function or is it a support function? If we go with it being a core function that enables the warfighter to do its business, then we have to think about how do we invest in that? How do we develop our tools and capabilities within the Air Force and Space Force? We have software factories where we are using those to bring tools to bear, prototyping, testing. How do we use our ranges to be able to test those out and really fulfill how we look at the adversary's tools versus ours? How do we think about cyber in its totality, whether it's workforce, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the partnerships with our industry. And I would ask, if you are an industry partner, we need you to be able to develop tools and capabilities at speed. The warfighter cannot wait years to get the tools they need to be able to be effective. We take way too long. We've been talking about this. I believe Katie talked about the acquisition model.
Correct.
And how we need to have DevSecOps built in to security by design. The CIO panel mentioned that as well. And so we need to be intentional and deliberate of how we talk about cyber, how we have cyber-minded warfighters at every level of the organization.
Other panel members, anybody want to jump in on the integration of cyber?
So one of the things I think that we're looking at in the dawn that is really critical is when we're talking not necessarily about the software acquisition pathway, but traditional acquisition, making cybersecurity a fourth pillar alongside cost schedule performance. Because for too long, cybersecurity has been built into those performance metrics, and because it is built in, it is not given the proper attention, and it becomes a trade space.
Yes.
And it can't be a trade space. Or if it must be, then we need to be explicit about it. And leaders need to know the risk that they're accepting when they trade away cybersecurity.
Great.
Absolutely, I agree 100% with that. And how do you hold them accountable? What type of governance structures do we need to have in place where we have the conversation with the warfighter, the acquisition, and the cyber to make those trades?
So I heard partnership, I heard governance, to try to get at some of those foundational things. On the partnership thing, I think the power we can bring together if we're able to go across each one of the departments and have that kind of conversation, I think we'll have a more powerful sense. So thanks for that response and thanks for adding in. Anne-Marie, we'll push on to the next question to you about how is the Navy addressing the growing emphasis on operational technology and also securing critical infrastructure.
Yeah, so I won't harp too much on Volt Typhoon, Salt Typhoon. I think everybody here is well aware by this point of the threat posed to our critical infrastructure, the nation's critical infrastructure, but also the infrastructure that supports DoD in our warfighting missions. A lot of our advancements in cybersecurity have been geared at the IT space, and that's great, but we need to rapidly apply our lessons learned to our operational technology. both in our critical infrastructure and on our weapons systems and platforms. So this was an area when I came into OSD PCA, where I used to work, that my good friend and colleague Daryl Hagley was harping about. And I'm like, Daryl, what is this OT thing you're going on about? And he has really been a great champion on the Air Force side, and you know, I think really I brought that message forward to the Dawn to say this is something we have to invest in, we have to do. One of the things that we have on the IT side that I think we were missing on the OT side was a framework, right? A common lexicon. When people used to say zero trust, it would get waved away as a buzzword. That's just, you know, it's a nothing burger. It doesn't mean anything. And the DoD CIO really put some rigor to saying, no, it does mean something, and here are the actual controls, here are the requirements that drive zero trust, and developed a shared understanding that then helped the DIB feed back to us those capabilities that we need. On the operational technology side, we need a similar lexicon and level of understanding of what it means to apply zero trust for operational technology. So the DoD has been investing in developing the Mosaics framework for a few years now. I'm happy to announce that it is finally published. I'm looking for a mechanism to get it out to the Defense Industrial Base for your comment, because like all things zero trust, it's never done. It will be a living document, and the adversary gets a say, right? So as we understand new threats, we have to up our game in zero trust, and we'll continue to develop that framework. But really, the framework is just a first piece. That is the foundation. The next step is actually bringing our weapon systems and our facilities into a secure environment, right? Applying those controls, understanding what a secure enclave looks like for OT. Who are the experts that we need providing that overwatch? It is probably not the same people that are currently in our cybersecurity service providers. This is a different skill set. Recognizing and training to that are going to be critical to getting where we need to go with OT cybersecurity.
Well, thanks for highlighting, and also for highlighting Daryl too. I had an opportunity to meet with him when I first got in this seat. A great champion for operational technology. Ms. Jones, you about to say something?
I certainly want to thank the Navy for actually leading the way with Mosaics. You know, within the Department of Air Force, we're not as mature, you know, with implementing the Mosaics technology and principles, and so we're watching what you guys are doing. Certainly, I've been an advocate for what we're calling our CROCS, which is our Cyber Resiliency of Control Systems organization, which recently stood up. Thank you to the CIO and the A4 for signing that memo, putting that in place, and we will use that organization to be what I call the front door to help us figure out what we need to do, where our investments needs to happen. And so we're moving in that direction, still fighting a good fight to advocate for funding in the out years for that. But I think because we have not invested enough in this space, functional areas, we're now playing catch up. And now that we realize that, we have to corporately, across the DoD, understand what the adversary is doing in that space, because they are very active. We have lots of indicators of compromise. The adversary has shown a couple vulnerabilities to us, and so we just need to make sure that we understand the tools and capabilities in this space. If a industry partner brings a solution to us, think about how we can apply it on IT and OT. That will certainly help us make a decision quicker on how do we employ those capabilities across both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, earlier I heard Ms. I think it was Goodwine on the CIO panel talking about bringing solutions to the table from our vendors. So one thing is to make sure that we are acknowledging the vendor and industry partnership that we have. Our success is interwoven with that, and the things that we can do, highlighting Mosaic and what the Navy is doing, demonstrates the partnership that we have internally and then also out to our industry partners. So Chief, now we're gonna get to a great workforce question. I mean, as you see there as a warrant officer, we have enlisted members. I think there's an enlisted panel going on at the same time. We saw officers, receiving some awards earlier today. Can you share with us, I know this is a small, limited pool of people working inside this domain. what is the Army doing to incentivize our cyber professionals?
Yes, sir, definitely. So with the 2023 NDAA, there was an authorization for the Cyber Peculiar Awards. And those are the approval for that is delegated down to the service, through the service secretaries, down to Army Cyber. And those awards are cash awards given to uniformed service members for their innovation in cyber achievements and contributions. So for the Army, we have started to hand out the cash awards. We've handed out 9 total. First 4 were distributed in June of last year. 9 total awards to 24 soldiers totaling just under $10,000. So when you look at innovation and empowering the warfighter, these incentives definitely encourage them to continue to be innovative and empower them along through their career.
Thank you. Any other workforce?
I'd just like to add and give kudos to Chief Engel personally, as well as the PCA office. When the Air Force first started thinking about the reestablishment of our warrant officer in the cyber and IT. I picked his brain for months before our former secretary, Mr. Kendall, decided to pull the trigger. And TA was involved in that, and I spent lots of hours asking questions, getting connections across the Army enterprise on how do we do this. We didn't want to start from scratch, and we knew the models were already out there in other services, and so we were able to glean lots of information on how we now establish this technical core in the Air Force. I am pleased to announce we are on class number 3 that graduates pretty soon. And we are already looking at the next selection in June, the next board. And so we're moving out to make sure that we have that technical expertise. In addition to that, from a civilian standpoint, we have either an enterprise track or a technical track, because we recognize not everybody wants to be a senior leader or be an SCS, but we need to harness and develop that technical skill. So we're looking at that as well. So we are certainly thankful to our sister services for their help in getting the Air Force in the game when it comes to warrant officers. I've been asked the questions over and over about, will the Space Force have warrant officers? I don't know, so don't ask that question. But it's already been considered, and we just don't know until our new secretary gets in.
So congratulations for doing it. I know it was a lot of hard work, and you ought to pull it across the line in a short order, so I know there's a lot of people involved.
Less than 1 year from hitting the button to graduating the first class on December 6th of 2024.
So kudos for that. And I know also the Navy's done a lot of great work on workforce as well. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to add on workforce, ma'am.
I'll just keep with the warrant officer theme and saying that I think there is a growing recognition of the importance of having multiple pathways to service in cyber, because as you said, a lot of people want to stay technical. They join, because they love the work, and not everybody wants to lead the work. Some folks want to stay hands on keyboard, and if we're not giving them options to do that, they will find their own way to do it, whether it's taking off the uniform and becoming a contractor or civilian. So to retain folks, we really need to invest in growing that warrant officer program to provide that third option that is, no, you can stay in, you can stay hands on keyboard, and we value that technical knowledge and reward it.
Thank you for each one of the services for pouring into the workforce. I know Mark Gorak, when we talk about these things, inside swim bee meetings and outside, we do appreciate the hard work that the services are doing, but also kudos to the DoD for setting up a framework for that. So Anne-Marie, I went down to the Air Force's War College. I'd done an intro on cyber, and one of the questions, was a lieutenant colonel stood up a pilot and said, well, cyber really isn't warfare because it doesn't break things. I mean, this was this person's, kind of way of seeing the world through probably a kinetic lens. Can you talk to us about how you see cyber warfare being able to influence conflict?
Yes, so first of all, cyber can absolutely break things, so he's just wrong. Good thing he's at the college. Hopefully he'll get better educated. So yes, I mean, cyber can certainly break things. That is not the only use of it. And increasingly, I am questioning the term cyber warfare.
Okay.
Because I don't think it is encompassing enough. And the thing I like to talk about instead, holistically, is either information warfare, which is a term that's often used in the Navy, or really broadly, the integration of non-kinetic effects. I think we were in a place 10 years ago where cyber needed to be called out, needed to be sort of singled out for maturation. We've come a long way. I'm not saying it's mission accomplished, but I think we're at a place now of maturity to talk about cyber together with other non-kinetic effects. And that is really going to be the defining characteristic of any next conflict, is non-kinetic effects holistically, both the conduct of them and the defense against them. And I think the military that can best integrate non-kinetic effects will be the prevailing force. This is something that we, as you heard Ms. Arrington say, have to invest in. It is not something that is just going to happen on its own. It is not an augmentation to kinetic effects. It is a discipline in its own right, and has to be fully matured so that we can employ it at a time and place of our choosing, integrated with kinetic effects. Particularly from the Department of Navy's point of view, one of the things that I continue to foot stomp on investment in non-kinetic effects is that this is how we bring our sailors and Marines home. This is how the Secretary of the Navy signs fewer condolence letters in conflict, is investment in non-kinetic effects. I don't know a stronger argument for the importance of this discipline in warfare.
Thank you. I mean, definitely important. I think we're seeing the rise of some non-kinetics, you know, a lot of talk in our office about EW and what role it plays, you know, as well. But that integration is going to be that key for the non-kinetics and then also to the kinetics. Anybody else on the warfare piece here? If not, we'll shift to Ms. Jones-Heath here to talk about long-term cyber resiliency. How do we do that better? What's some of the ideas that you have about that?
You know, the first thing that comes to mind is, you know, what is our overarching strategy? You know, how do we want to develop the concepts of cyber resiliency at every level, whether it's our networks, our infrastructure, our systems, our weapon systems, business systems? You know, how do we do that? The part that really concerns me is, you know, we talk about zero trust, and what does that really mean? You know, employing zero trust principles throughout the enterprise, you know, how do we do that? We can't go greenfield. So how do we take what we need to do from a zero trust perspective and invest in it? We know that 2027 is right around the corner, and we have that guidance that we must be zero trust finished or, you know, in progress. You know, how do we do that? And then, you know, while we are re-architecting our networks, how do we now take care of legacy? You know, we can't throw every weapon system out. We can't bolt on cyber, you know, security measures. We can't wait 10 years for a new capability to come in place. So how do we modernize, do zero trust, and then still operate? At the end of the day, it's about the warfighter. If we're not able to give them the tools, the capabilities, and the systems to continue to fight through, we're not going to be able to do that. In order to have long-term, we have to have the people, right? Mm-hmm. You know, how do we invest in AI and other innovative type capabilities without breaking the bank? Mm-hmm. You know, our people are very smart. We have very technical people. We have people who understand, you know, where we need to go. How do we employ them to do that? How do we give them the tools to make the decisions at speed in order to be more resilient? You talked about bringing folks home, using cyber to do that from where we, you know, deploy. Space Force, they don't deploy. They fight from their home station. How do we give them the infrastructure that they need to fight and to win in that space? So I think long term, it's about readiness, investment, people, and understanding where we need to go as a nation.
Okay. So the people and then the process and the technology to make sure that we're able to do that. Anybody else want to add any remarks on resiliency or survivability?
I would challenge that I think there are some places where we're going to have to greenfield, but that is an investment problem. It is very expensive. But the places where we have seen zero trust success, specifically Navy's flank speed environment, that was greenfielded. But that was an argument that we had to make to get the investment to be able to do that greenfielding and prove zero trust is possible, right? These controls work. We know that it complicates what the adversary tries to do when we apply these zero trust controls, and flank speed proves that out. But it is a hard time to make greenfielding arguments. But I think using the flank speed example, we are looking at now, how do we build on that, and where's the next place we need to greenfield, whether that's SIPR 2.0 or other environments.
Yeah, we talked about doing some greenfield in 2.0, that man-made environment that cyber is, right? We have an opportunity to reshape that when we want to, but as you know, that's going to take the funding, the time, and the talent to be able to get there. Yeah. So as we transition to talk about threat actors there, Chief, as you know, there's been a lot going on as we see the threat shifting and the TTPs that our threat actors are doing. What is the Army doing to respond to the threat actors, especially when we see them on our critical infrastructure?
Yes, sir. So one area that the Army has addressed this is through Section 1505 that in the FY22 NDA that codified operational technology. Originally, the Army aligned these requirements under the G9, but as critical infrastructure intrusions continue to evolve, with the Sage Council of the Army PCA, the Undersecretary of the Army directed the Army Cyber Commander to conduct a commander's estimate of the Army's operational technology environment. And in December of last year, Army senior leaders decided to restructure the governance process for OT internal to the Department of the Army and designated Army Cyber as the primary organization responsible for the protection of critical infrastructure. So with that, and through our Cyber Yankee program, or Cyber Yankee exercises, excuse me, the National Guard has been able to partner with utility companies to help build the foundational trust and relationships in the event of a real world incident, because those are the ones that are going to have to respond.
Yeah, I think our National Guard members offer a different, opportunity to partner as they're in those states, partner with some of the local entities. And they have an excellent, international program where those states get tagged up with another international partner. So I think our Guard force will be tremendous in doing the work that we're talking about. As we turn to the audience now, hopefully you all have come up with some great questions to remember the hard ones for Chief. But it's an opportunity for us to hear from you all. If you haven't texted in your question, this will be an opportunity to do so. And I'll turn to the voice above to see what's our first question we may have.
Thank you, sir. The first one is specifically addressed to Chief Mathias.
Perfect.
How does the Army's sensitive but unclassified data risk management fit within an integrated DoD approach?
That's a good question. And I wish I had a better answer for you. Definitely was not prepared for that one. But I will say that, the Army is reviewing their processes and how as we go through this transformation, we're reviewing everything top to bottom. So
okay,
that's about all I can give you.
Well, Chief, you're not off the hot seat yet because we got another one just for you.
I love this.
I love it too.
Keep going.
Yeah,
How do we manage data risk differently at brigade and below?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
How do we manage data risk differently at brigade and below?
That is a good question. I think that with the way the Army is transitioning from from having SIPRNet and other things at the brigade and below level to sensitive but unclassified information at those levels, I think that's going to also help reduce some of our risks at that level.
Yeah, and I think it helps at every level, you know, inside the formations of all the services to be able to have an opportunity to look at risk. You know, that risk shows up differently at the tactical level than it does at the strategic level. But I don't know if we have the bodies or the governance to be able to quickly identify that risk and then do something about it. So the mission owner that has that risk on the ground, you know, may be absorbing some risk at the strategic level we may not want to absorb. And those are things that we'll have to work through a process that will illuminate that risk. And I know there's more talk about how do we get that risk. You kind of heard the conversation earlier about RMF, you know, what that is a framework to be able to manage risk. But how do we get the process owners, the system owners, the mission owners to be able to talk about that risk and alleviate it for decision makers above? Any other questions?
So I had the opportunity to attend the workshop that DoD CIO hosted on blowing up the RMF. We were both there. It was a great workshop. And one of the things I was really excited to hear sort of consensus on was this acknowledgement that risk is different at the tactical, operational, and strategic levels at the data layer, right? That when you're talking about tactical, there's a perishability to a lot of the data, and that we need to think about things differently and not apply one blanket set of risk categorization or risk management to sort of that tactical level, which should be more risk tolerant, right? Should be more responsive, more time sensitive, and less concerned because so much of that data, particularly when we're talking about in crisis and conflict, is going to be perishable.
Correct. I agree.
Yeah, from the workshop, I think it was a great opportunity. I believe the time is now to take advantage of the want to change and transform how we address risk at various levels. Not all risk is equal, and there are multiple stakeholders that get a vote, especially the mission owner versus the actual warfighter that's right there in the mix of the fight. They see risk differently. And the lexicon around how we define risk also has to be discussed and settled on. So I think, you know, from a cultural standpoint, it's going to be a big push. Can we do it? It's going to take a lot of agreement on what it is and how we now design our risk matrix versus the governance that leads it, and then use that to drive the way we're going to set up the new framework. So I'm excited. Hopefully Katie can push that over the finish line as well.
So that RMF risk that we talk about and blowing that up, John Garski and I have had conversations about how we look at risk, you know, from a lens through a mission thread, like looking throughout how a combatant command would see risk. Transcom was one of the deep dives that they did. And a lot of the systems that the Transcom commander is using, and of course some of the services are the ones who own those systems. And they may be taking some risks there that a combatant commander may not want them to take. And then how do we illuminate that, you know, before we get into the conflict or some of the things we've been talking about?
And I would add that some of that risk is also given to us by our commercial partners.
Oh,
right?
True.
So we have to bring that into the conversation, especially in that example that you use, because all the risks integrated together, you know, brings us into a different category.
Very good point about the commercial, especially with the Transcom mission, because a lot of their systems are unclassed. All right, what other questions do we have out there?
Well, they've quit picking on the chief and are now sending in questions for all of you. First up, how do you plan to protect data on 5G, next-G networks on base or forward deployed?
Oh, I thought they said they quit picking on the chief.
No, they say they continue to pick on the chief.
Oh.
I thought they said quit too, but I mean, we could continue to pick on the chief and make him go first. So I'll have to channel my counterpart Jane Rathbun, because she's not here, the Dawn CIO, and say I think how she would respond to this is it really shouldn't matter what medium the data is going over. The data is the keys to the kingdom, the thing that we are trying to protect. The transport medium is agnostic, and that is one of the sort of roots of zero trust, right, is getting down to that data level protection of what that element is. How do we protect it? Now, the technical thing, I don't know, over to Chief, or I'd have to kick it over to somebody from CIO to say, you know, what are the mechanisms we're going to apply there? But I don't think in the grand scheme of things, it should be wildly different, whether we're talking about data going over LEO or terrestrial fiber or a 5G network.
I agree.
Yes, I definitely agree with you, ma'am. And as you said, the data is the most important thing, and that's what needs to be protected. One way that you can protect it is by, you know, the device that's connected to the network, making sure that that's a trusted device, right? So that's one thing that we can all do is, you know, make sure that our equipment is trusted and the person is trusted, and then therefore the data should be trusted as well.
Yeah, concur. That was a 5G kind of question. I don't know, it could have come from Harry Wingo. Harry Wingo, did you? Harry's like, no, I didn't send it in. All right, other questions that are out there.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in achieving zero trust by 2027?
Well, the Navy has already achieved it, we know,
Well,
right?
only flank speed.
Yes, flank
right?
speed.
So,
So you guys got a
we have
certificate for
a
that.
model
Yes.
on our unclassified network, which is flank speed. I think a lot of those lessons learned we can apply to SIPRNet and other networks. Again, I'll go back to my comments on operational technology. That is a significantly longer pole in the tent. Not because we don't know how, we're starting to figure that out. A lot of it is the investment, right?
Yep.
A lot of our infrastructure is old. We cannot apply modern cybersecurity capabilities to that infrastructure without significant rip and replace, and that's just expensive. So the Navy is undergoing a process. We have a prioritized work list. It's tied to Indo-PACOM priorities, and we are burning down through a program of wholeness, really one sort of installation at a time. But that is slow and that is expensive. So that's a long pole in simply how long it's going to take to get there. The weapon systems are another long pole in the tent because we can't simply rip and replace there with a lot of these things that are in the inventory, in sustainment. They're intended to be in use for another 10 or more years. So how do we take zero trust principles and apply them to things that were never intended to have these controls applied to them?
And I would add, we recently, along with the CIO, had a zero trust deep dive to really figure out exactly where we are by pillar, by action, by targeted for 2027, and understanding the interdependencies was very alarming because we were investing in zero trust as much as we can. We also have other infrastructure upgrades with EIT as a service. BIM is one of the programs we have in place, and trying to deconflict and figure out what our priorities are. We have a priority schema, and the PACOM is certainly at the top of the list. Our Space Force bases are at the top of the list as well, and just trying to just look at what is possible is huge. In investing, you know, trying to apply principles where you can, figure out what other solutions you can use, working across our commercial partners to determine what tools they have that can fit multiple networks. And I think it's going to be very interesting when we get to 2027 to see how much we've come. We've done a lot of work, but I think we have a long way to go. And I think corporately, from a DoD CIO perspective, we need advocacy for funding. We need advocacy for what are the top priorities across the DoD, not just individual services.
So I hear, you know, resources is one, and then alternative ways. I think the biggest thing that the department can do is to look at what do we want to stop doing. If the budgets are going to decline, we won't be able to keep up doing all things, and we shouldn't try to peanut butter spread to where we're ineffective in all things. Where do we want to be really effective and that is a deep drill on what things can we stop doing. Chief, what do you have on that?
I definitely agree, and I like to treat the network as a weapon system. In my mind, it's always been a part of a weapon system one way or another. And so the resourcing to help get us to zero trust is definitely going to be critical. For the Army, as far as getting there by 2027, I think we're on a great path with our unified network efforts, reducing old networks that were mismanaged or did not have oversight by Army Cyber and Netcom. I think those are two efforts that one effort that we've actually made a lot of progress in, and I think 2027 is going to be an exciting time for us.
All right, thanks, Chief. We'll take a few more questions. What's the next question we may have?
The next one follows up on the point that you were just making, General. In the current fiscal environment, are there areas that you see potential to move money away from in favor of new investments?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is just really being stringent about looking at where we have duplication of effort. There's no reason why each and every program needs to be developing its own cybersecurity solutions, right? These are things that we can offer at an enterprise level and not have the programs duplicating the cost of, say, coming up with, an identity management tool.
Right.
That doesn't make sense in this environment. We really have to drive discipline there. And in the Dawn, we're shifting towards looking at cybersecurity as a holistic portfolio between the PCA and the CIO to really discipline those investments and look at each and everything and say, does this need to be a bespoke solution for that program, or can we bring it up to the enterprise level and create cost savings by offering it at the enterprise and cattle driving or decrementing those duplicative efforts. Also driving the discipline in the accepted networks too, right? To say we don't need 200 different networks. We need a NIPR, a SIPR, and a JWIC solution. That's really it. So. There has to be a lot more discipline there, both on the enterprise solutions and in the accepted networks.
Yep.
Absolutely the same thing. And finding where our IT spend has been one of the things that I know the CIO is really working on, because we have shadow IT popping up in different places. So understanding who's buying IT and why, leaning on enterprise solutions versus I want to do my own thing. We have to hold people accountable, and we have to have the governance that encourages people to deliver the enterprise solution first. And if it's not a solution, then if you develop a solution, maybe that can be the enterprise solution for further usage across the enterprise as well.
Okay, I agree. Thank you.
No, yeah, if you've paid attention to the news over the weekend and you've seen the messages that came out from Secretary of Defense and Secretary of the Army about the transformation that we're going to start going through, I think that there's ways right there that will help us find extra resources, and I'm hopeful for that.
Okay, well, thank you. What's the next question we may have?
This one is addressed to Dr. Jones-Heath. Where are Air Force Chief Warrant Officers assigned and located, and how does industry help with educating them on specific cyber knowledge, education, and training?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the first set of warrant officers for the cyber and IT group field were put in 16th Air Force. So they're AF Cyber, they're at our wings under 16th Air Force. We have Guard and Reserve units as well that have warrant officers. And then we have them just in our traditional IT units. What we didn't do was develop the requirement for cyber and IT warrant officer in our training. So that's our second thing. Instructors, we want warrant officers teaching warrant officers, right? And so that was one of the things that we didn't think about going forward in the initial tranche, and so we're going to put them there. We didn't put any at Cybercom, right? Because they're ones and twos with a few threes sprinkled in, I think. So they're not seasoned enough to be in that environment, but that is long-term strategy. Do we need a cyber and IT warrant officer, doing functional manager? So that's, things that we're thinking about as we grow the core. We're starting, very young, and we need our sister services. Hopefully, if we get some inter-service transfer, that we will have some of those warrant 4s and 5s, right? I'm not saying anything to the Army, but if they would comply, that would be great. And
I
so
will take some of that too.
Come
being
on,
able
Army.
to do that. So we have a long way to go as we mature that, and we are on a great glide slope to be able to grow and mature the one officer. How the commercial industry can help training, right? You know, we can't afford to continuously update our training on the cycle that we need. So we may depend on our commercial partners that have that training, like SANS and all those institutions that have that training. We know that when the warrant officers who were put in training for the Army, they used that before they were able to create their own training classes and module. We're not there yet, so we may need to depend on either the Army or the Navy training modules to be able to fill those gaps in industry as well.
Okay.
Hopefully I did good, Chief Schaefer.
I know that was a Chief Schaefer question
I was looking at her go,
by design.
No, yes, ma'am. If you need some help from the Army, we'll definitely be able to
Get
send
that
some-
heard it
right.
here
Get that
on
in right.
Send some young airmen over to the Cyber Center of Excellence to get trained up to become instructors and go back to the force and serve.
I've done some initial studies on some of the things that you guys have at that institution down in Augusta. And so if we're able to mature our warrant officers and grow them to where we need them to be, we need something like that as well. We're just not, there
It takes
yet.
time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks for that. We'll take one more question. I think I want to go early to go get some cookies before they're all gone. But we'll do just one more question.
How is the active component supporting the National Guard with critical infrastructure protection in light of military installations' reliance on local water, electricity, communications, healthcare, and the like?
Starting with the chief, you brought up the National Guard earlier. Let's go.
Right, so as I already stated, one way that we're doing that is through the Cyber Yankee exercises. Additionally, when I was, serving on a national CPT, we partnered with one of our power plants that was local to Augusta, Savannah River, and we were able to help build those relationships so that if a need arises, they are ready to respond accordingly. So that's one of the active component is helping through, continuing to foster those relationships, continuing to house the exercises and the programs so that there can be a bench to call on if needed, basically.
Okay. Anyway.
So one of the things that we're doing, and I've been advocating for the last 2 years, is adding to our red team capability, having a red team that is focused on operational technology, as well as having our mission defense team, our MACE, as they're called now, to be able to be proficient in defending that space as well. So we're looking at how do we now have parity with IT and OT in that space.
Okay. Well, thank you. At this point in time, we'll do some quick wrap up. I'll go around each one of the panel members to give them an opportunity to provide closing remarks. We'll first start with you, ma'am.
Oh, I don't know. I think I've said about everything.
Okay.
Just thank you to AFCEA for hosting this event and having us, giving us the opportunity. I mean, we talk as PCAs quite a lot, but whenever I come out with my colleagues, I still always learn something new and come away with something else to think about. And I think today, one of the things that, that I'm thinking about leaving is how we as service and OSD PCA really share the benefit of our efforts, right? Each of us has advantages or areas that we're more advanced. How do we do better at sharing those across the services and OSD as another sort of efficiency and cost saving and acceleration measure? So going forward, I think that'll be something I'm really looking forward to working with you all on.
And ma'am, I thank you for your partnership. I mean, you've been in my office, right? So you've had the experience of working at the OSD PCA. You spent some time, on the joint staff and now in this position. So I think, your exposure and experience is going to continue to help the Navy. So thank you for all your partnership and support. Now, I know Ms. Jones-Heath, former CISO and the longest serving PCA currently and ever, right? Because I know you are.
The last appointed and the still one.
And still the one in, right? So we'll turn it over to you for your closing remarks.
So, you know, to expand on what Anne Marie talked about, the partnerships among the PCA offices is very important. But I would expand that to the CIOs. We must continue to work with the DoD CIO and the service CIOs and CISOs to be successful. In addition to that, within the Department of Air Force is our sixes, right? On the Space Force and the Air Force, we have to we're in the same boat. Stakeholders, and then you add 16th Air Force. We have to be able to come together to push our cyber and IT portfolio to where it needs to be.
All right, thank you, ma'am.
No, I just want to piggyback off you two ladies' comments about our partnership. It's been great in the office for the last 2 years, watching how our bi-weekly PCA syncs have evolved to where everybody now huddles in the Army PCA office and we get to chit-chat a little before, a little bit after, our quarterly cook-offs and stuff. So the partnership between the service PCAs is great, and also our partnerships within our own service CIOs and G6. That's going to be key moving forward.
It's good seeing you all huddled there. Now, as we were in the Martin Center holding the meeting, I'm like, man, I need to be, back in person. But thanks to the Army for the partnership, as well. We have a lot of opportunity to grow and learn from each other. I know there's at times a lot of conversation, as you mentioned, the partnership with the CIO, the sixes, about thinking there are too many people playing in the cyber domain. I know there's been conversations about where is that overlap, especially during times of efficiency. But I talked to my team is also just talking about, if you look at the cyber domain as the body, we have different specialties that each one of us are looking at the body and that domain differently for. And I think the expertise that the CIO brings to the table is different, looking at the body from what the PCA would do, like looking through that from a maneuver force and what did that maneuver force need. And the same thing as the sixes would take technology to war and say the acquisition community inquiring. There's a role for each one of us to play because it's unique across the cyber domain. So again, thank you all for the partnership. Before we end and close this up, I do want to thank again AFCEA for their leadership, General Lawrence, and particularly for you, for your partnership, the kindness, the gentle spirit that you have, and also your vision for the organization, making sure they're staying viable. We have a lot of opportunity with AFCEA to partner throughout the conferences with your vice presidents that are here and all of your team. We want to say thank you. And also to the industry partners that are here and the audience members, thank you all for listening to this panel. Thank you all for your partnership. There's an opportunity that each one of us can do to strengthen that partnership. We'd be happy to do so. And with that, I'll say have a great day and hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the conference. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tim Reyna back to the stage.
That was good. That went well.
What's that, ma'am?
Are you leaving?
Sir, before we close out, I just want to let you know, thank you for your remarks and the panelists for supporting this. Sir, in lieu of a speaker gift, AFCEA will donate to Fisher House on the behalf of yourself and the panelist members today, sir, so thank you for that. You can see the session highlights from our upcoming schedule on the screen. We have one more session, theater session, so please look at your schedule and if time being, attend that. For those of us that stayed here and you'd like to see EU credits, I remind you, please do not forget to scan your badges on the way out. Thank you, everybody, for attending.